from the Aura Ring to the Whoop
Ooh,
band.
yes.
I told you that. And my Whoop band, it definitely says I need a restoration
Mm,
this weekend. So it's going to be a nice, mellow weekend.
that's good. Uh, if I might digress for like 5 seconds, I loved hearing the Whoop story earlier this week. We partnered with UKG on a webinar for Unleash, talking about AI. We say AI all the time, like intelligent, let's just say intelligent employee experiences. And the company, Whoop, if you're red, you don't go into work. But if you can run a green streak, you're rewarded, you're incented for staying in the green. That's incredible. Talk about putting your money where your mouth is.
It's great. And I highly encourage for those of you that aren't doing any kind of health tracking to to start, only because it is going to be the way that healthcare leverages technology going forward to improve all of our lives.
Totally.
It's very, very early. But I think I shared on one of the last meetups that I use the Whoop coach quite a bit based on my color, based on my score to say what else could I do. And I think that the more we can get used to a coach, uh,
Mm.
that something, and once again, it's not something that's we're doing once a year. Or I was at a company earlier this week in Dallas that does their employee satisfaction survey once every 2 years.
Oh,
Like still,
you
like
happy? We'll ask you again in 2 years.
yeah, like this is
You're still young.
still Whoop, WHOOP, Dorothy. This is real time. So, is your stress going up? Is your stress going down based on your sleep last night? How much should you be doing the next day? And the coaching along with it is really, really great. So, I mean, they're expensive. These tools are expensive. Um, they're a couple $100. But what they are able to do for someone who struggles with mental health issues, and I believe there's a tie between physical and mental health very, very closely. They're really, really powerful. So I'm tired. Whoop told me I'm tired. I don't know if that's psychosomatic. I feel tired, but really, really excited for to be here today. Jess, I'd love to hear about your one big thing this week because you
Mm.
sound like you've had your hands in lots of things. I'd love everyone in the chat to type their one big thing, the one thing you did this week that you're proud of. Just, I try to do this with all the different teams that I'm part of here at Mercer. But one thing that you're proud of this week, and it could be personal, it could be work related, it could be both, it could be none. I'm not sure how that works. But what's the one thing that you're proud of this week? And please, you guys take time to think about it while Jess is talking and while I talk about mine.
Two things. I promise I'll go fast.
That's good.
My one big thing, I hope, is happening right after this meetup. I have my bag packed. I'm going to go meet with a local business who has a foundation who wants to support diverse daisies. So I'm bringing hats and mittens. I have a pitch, basically, Jason. Um, because somebody loves what we're up to and wants to become a corporate sponsor and put their foundational support behind us, which is incredible. It's incredible. It's terrible timing because I have a lot of other stuff to do. So from there, I'm going to race over to the middle school for the third night of my children's middle school musical. That's my one big thing, watching my kids on stage. It's kind of my favorite year of the, I'm sorry, my favorite week of the year. Watching, like, middle school is such a beautiful age. It's such a weird, awkward, messy age. Like, there's so much about middle school, but watching 100 kids between the cast and crew come together to put on 5 performances, there is like absolute magic in being backstage for that. And I'm hair and makeup mom, so I get to like touch all their little faces and help them look amazing and fix their hair. Like, my job is to make them feel amazing in the big moment that they're about to have. I'm the last person they talk to before they go out. Like, my job is not about hair and makeup. My job is about giving them a moment. And it's so beautiful. Like, it's so crazy, like helping them get their costume change and like, oh my God, I would not want to be anywhere. And this week, that's exactly where I needed to be. I needed to be with 13-year-olds who were nervous to go out on stage, who were happy to be singing in the rain. And like, I really, really needed that this week. So that's my one big thing. And I'm pretty excited for Diverse Daisies next.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was that two things you shared or was that
That's
one
two
thing?
things. I'm super excited about the opportunity I have next in like an hour and a half for Diverse Daisies. And so, I'm all about shaping the future for kids. I know it's a shit show out there right now. I think that we can all pay it forward by focusing on the future. And for me, that's starting as small, like starting as early and as small as we can. It's their future we're working on. And I think we have a lot of impact. I think we can create a lot of impact. So my one big thing usually goes to that.
I love all of these comments, you guys, and I'm not going to read them all because it would take a long, long time. But I hope you guys take an opportunity to read them because they're making me greener just by reading them. So thank you for sharing. Even Kristen taking down her Christmas tree before Jess.
Hmm.
Uh, it makes me quote unquote smile. So, and by the way, congratulations on a new job.
Oh, look at
Congratulations
you.
on picking out your wedding venue. Like lots, made the best chicken noodle soup ever this week. I'm not going to call them all out, but just a few things. So I've got three,
Oh,
and I will go really, really quick. And I'll start with the most current one, which was late last night. Most people know, I'm working on teaching a lot more, and I was teaching at the College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina last night. Don't ask how I got to Austin between now and then. It's a different story. But uh, I had an opportunity to talk to a bunch of undergrads who are struggling with trying to figure out why, when they do their higher view first round interviews, they every one of them gets rejected within 5 minutes. And they were asking me, do people actually look at these if we get rejected in 5 minutes? And how does that work? And it was crazy. It was a crazy, crazy discussion and a crazy, crazy, like, oh shit moment where they're like, why do companies use that if they're just going to screen us out because
oh my
of
God.
X, Y, and Z? Because we didn't
Back to
look at the,
my age-old beef with talent acquisition, which I grew up in. We spend more time and energy screening people out than we do screening people in.
yeah, but we had a brilliant, brilliant discussion. The second one, really quickly, I was at a company in Dallas earlier this week, and I'm going to share the story because I think it's interesting. The company's called Terminix Rent a Kill, and most of you know Terminix is pest control and things like that. But I happened to meet a woman, and I may ask her to come onto the meetup, even though it might be odd. Um, but
Yeah,
this
the
woman
rest of this.
embodied loving her job. And what she loves are bugs and pests.
She really does.
Oh my God, she loves bugs and pests.
But her
So,
job is to exterminate them.
yes, but in Irving, Texas, she is the responsible for 150,000 square foot facility that's made up of three warehouses where all they do are grow bugs and pests.
To practice killing them?
Yes,
Okay.
three 340 different types of mosquitoes, 17 different types of cockroaches, 47 different species of mice. And I was in with all of them. And it was so crazy. But at the same time, not to get too deep, but what I loved is how much she loved it. She didn't love the animals, I mean, the pests, but she loved the concept of what it was she was doing, which was science, which is
Hmm.
trying to figure out how to make life better for people that had
Not
to deal
pets.
with these pests. And like, I fell in love with her. I was like, like, and they do college tours and high school tours. So if anyone's ever in Dallas, and is interested, it's an amazing facility.
Should I bring diverse daisies down there? We love these kind of educational
I don't know
tools.
if they want a lot of screaming, but that's what would happen. And then the third thing I just wanted to say that just from an innovation standpoint, I had the opportunity and on Monday night to install DeepSeek, which is
Mm,
some of us have heard of that, which is a new AI model that is open source. I installed it on my personal laptop and basically created stuff that I've been trying to
Did you take
create.
everything else off of your personal laptop
Nope,
first, or you
nope,
went for it? Okay.
yeah. Why would I take everything off?
I don't know. Why did we outlaw TikTok?
Well, hold on a second. The DeepSeek running on my laptop, it's not connected to anything.
I know, I'm joking.
Yeah. So I actually had the opportunity to build some things that were very, very basic things. One was a connection between my Whoop band and thinking about how do I tie that to Apple capabilities that I didn't think of before. Another was something simple like how do I integrate data from an Excel spreadsheet into like a Workday instance? And I was blown away. So stuff that I've never been able to do because I was not able to have a model on my device.
Right.
I didn't want to put this data in the cloud. Now I was able to do. And the open source of AI models, I'm just going to say this, is going to change the world even more than what I thought was going to happen with AI. And we're not going to talk much more about that today because it's a very long discussion. But what that means, and I had a long discussion last night with the students in the class, but it's really, really important that we keep watching this. And for a minute, let's not pay attention to where it was it's developed. Let's
Right.
pay attention to the open versus commercial and understanding
Yeah.
where that's headed.
Yes, I didn't mean to make Chinese data jokes, but I do think it's important to, I'm going to find it really quick and link it in the chat. If anybody follows Ray Wang, Holger Mueller, Constellation Research, they did a 30-minute analysis of this, why this is so important, how DeepSeek drives curve, the cost curve of AI down, and why that's significant. If you want to geek out on this, just from a purely analytical, how this changes the game kind of perspective, I highly recommend this 30-minute debrief on what happened and why it's significant. I'll find it and I'll link it.
And Sarah, I love what Sarah just put in the chat was a link to a data breach. And once again, I beg you to look at those things and just be careful. Okay, don't stop learning because of it. I would never put sensitive data in a public instance like that, which is why I put it on my local device. And because it's on my local device, I felt very comfortable playing with it. For those of you that think you're using a server in China, if you go to Perplexity, Perplexity is running DeepSeek on Perplexity on a US-based server because it's open source. Okay, so different ways to try these models. But the last thing, and then I'll be done, is I ask you to, when you do, look at the reasoning. Okay, and why I say look at the reasoning is because up until now, everyone has been saying, by the way, Connor Brennan is a great leader in this space. He wants to come on the show, Jess. We need to have
Good.
him on. But sorry, the reasoning. So a lot of people are like, how does this thing do this? How is this coming up with answers? How is it doing this thinking? When all of a sudden you turn on reasoning and see how these tools actually reason,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. So when you think about reasoning and these large language models, please at least understand what it means so that you don't think it's a black box of magic.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're not planning on testing it or don't have access to it yourself, there's lots of demo videos out there that you can find. Glenn Cathy, for you recruiting geeks, you know Glenn for sure. He's like one of the best scientific sourcers in the world, posted a video of creating a search on DeepSeek, and he recommends smartly slowing it down to like 0.5 or 0.75 play speed so you can see the reasoning and how it thinks and corrects itself and does its own analysis of its own results and tries again. It's pretty impressive. It's impressive to watch to see how this stuff is being developed.
Yeah, Aaron just put his reasoning the right term. Aaron, it is the right term.
Yeah.
Because it is probabilistic. It is data. But to think about based on your prompt and understanding probabilistically what you're trying to do and you're trying to say, then to see how the machine reasons based on that. Once again, still probabilistic. It's really, really important to understand how this is working.
Yeah.
Okay. That we could do that all day. We should probably do another AI session soon
I
in the
know.
meetup, even though our calendar is booked. But we'll find a
I
way
know.
to.
I kind of regret booking us out so far. There's too much happening too fast to
Yeah.
presuppose what we need to talk about.
So Jess, we have guests.
Yeah.
Guests.
Yes. We want to go to the first one. Well, first of all, I haven't even looked. Oh my goodness. So hopefully JC's got us covered.
Well, it's good to have a producer who's on top of
Somebody
things, right?
watching for us. I asked a big favor to Brian Sommer to pop in with us. We're going to
He's
talk.
usually very talkative.
I know. So let's see. Oh, perfect. JC says she's
She's
actually
adding
in.
him. He hasn't said a word. I haven't seen his name
He's
come up in the
taking it
chat.
all in. He's testing
The
deep.
question is, Jess, is he wearing a tie? Yes or no?
Yes. We'll
Okay,
see.
I'm gonna say no, just so that I'm
Just
opposite.
to,
But
just to be
yeah,
opposite.
yeah, just like I lost both football game bets last weekend with a friend.
Uh-oh.
Where is he?
He's putting on a tie so that he'll win.
Oh, look at him!
How are you, Mr. Summer?
Good to see you guys today. In fact, it's good to see both of you, and we're not in a convention center. So yes, victory on that front.
That is
Well,
good.
and Brian, did you hear the bet that Jess and I just made?
No, I missed that.
Yeah,
What?
so we bet $1,000 spa treatment session, whether you were wearing a tie today. And Jess bet yes, and I bet no.
Well, you were gambling, really. I had one on all week, and I actually had let's call it, we had a mishap. My German Shepherd came running at me with muddy paws, and that's the end of that dress shirt. So I pulled this turtleneck on just before the call. Anyway,
Jess,
I
you
barely
just
lost
cost Jess $1,000.
I need to talk to that German Shepherd.
well,
Brian, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go. Charles show.
Well, we can't wait to get to Rebecca. And Rebecca, thank you for being gracious. I had to grab Brian because you wrote a piece that Jason and I both found to be brilliant. Everything you write is brilliant, but it's something that we have been talking about internally at Mercer. Every consulting shop should be talking about this. Every company should be figuring this out. How does AI change your job and the way you go about doing your work? I think what you wrote about consulting is really important to understand. And we were just kind of talking about DeepSeek and does this stuff really reason and how far will it go with all of these AI capabilities? Can you just tell us what you wrote and why this is so significant right now?
So a lot of people have been writing one of two kinds of AI stories in, around verticals. One's either very alarmist, or the other one is all about how everyone's going to run off and do all this highly productive stuff, and AI is going to do all those other things behind the scenes. The problem is no one really talks about what are the structural implications on what's going to happen to a given industry. And in consulting, for example, I pointed out with so much of what we used to call at Accenture, the scut work that had to get done by a lot of staffers and the like.
What
That's
was
going
that?
to be
Scut?
scut work.
Is that an acronym or is that just some?
No, I just think it was a slang word somebody used, and it's just been going around for a long time.
Nicole just put
Nicole
such a
said it's
physician
physician.
term, scut.
Well, anyway, it wasn't the glamorous stuff. It's not what the equity partners, when it came time to present to the client, they had nice polished PowerPoint slides and spreadsheets and everything else. And some legion of people toiled forever putting that stuff together. That's what AI is going to be doing a lot of now. They're going to build all the work plans. They're going to do all the initial deep dive and discovery of a lot of information. And in the end, I think we need to talk about what's going to happen to that industry. And one of the things is it's going to have an impact on apprenticeship and the pyramid sizes. And you won't need as many staff people to do staff grunt level kind of work. AI is going to do that. So that begs bigger questions like, well, how do we train up the next generation of brilliant consultants? Because the other thing in that article I really focused on was there's a lot of things AI can't do, and it can't do well right now. And it's not going to probably do some of those things well, because when it comes to who can push a client to get them through a project and complete the deal, last I checked, AI can't do that. AI can tell you about the plan that you're working on, but it can't make you give up your old systems, your old work processes and everything else. You sometimes need people to physically be at the client to just push them over the finish line and get them to make the change. Anyway, sorry, I gave too long of an answer there. My apologies.
No, that was perfect. That was perfect because I think we keep asking the question, rightly so, what AI can do and then what it should do. And then the next question, of course, after that means, so what does this mean for us from I'll say work design. I feel like I'm overusing work design for the way we think about work and all of the ways it can get done. Yes, that's work design. We're actually going to talk about talent intelligence next, but yeah, that's work design. Like what jobs and how do we structure them and what does our career framework look like? But also just thinking about workflows, like literally, how do we get to impact faster? We get to ask these questions all over again with fresh new answers that didn't exist a few years ago. That's the transformative part of all of this.
Well, whatever I wrote, I will say it had an impact. Jess, yours was the first email or outreach I got when that article went out. I didn't even realize it had gone out because I send stories to Diginomica and other places, and I don't necessarily know when they run. But anyway, so I sent that one out. Bam! I got a reply from you, and then I also got 4 more this week, and these were all folks who really, really, really want to talk about it. So this is a big issue. And it's not limited to consulting. The same kind of discussions we're going to have in virtually every single vertical out there. And it is around what will be the work that we're going to do specifically? What will AI do? What will AI not do? But there's one thing I didn't put in the article that I think is really troubling me is AI has the ability to dramatically accelerate the speed with which we get to like consulting answers. And something that used to take you weeks or months to dig through all the data and everything else, we're going to now know we should be able to start a project on a Monday and have a management presentation on like Wednesday or Thursday. Because what's going on? Okay, so
Brian, I had to just do a little example with reasoning with DeepSeek. So the first thing when I said scut, what is scut? It came up with basically animals that have Middle English, Norse, or Latin roots. Then I said, how about being tied to a consultant? So here's the reasoning. It uses the word scut. It went back and said scut work refers to menial tasks, often in medical context dating back to the 1960s, which is fascinating. Then it tied it back to consulting, and then it came back to it said it's tied to menial work that isn't adding value.
So now you're making me feel, Jason, I should never be a guest on your show again because you're going to do real-time AI validation to everything I say. Okay, so not feeling the warm and fuzzies.
No, I just wanted to know. It's a new word for my vocabulary. Like I learned something new every day. So I think it's really, really helpful. Thank you for sharing what you do. And really
thank you, Brian. Brilliant article. And I love Bob's comment, need to get yourself to the top quartile. of whatever profession you want to be in. And getting yourself in the top quartile means figuring out how to team with these types of tools. That's really important for people to understand. Yeah,
I mean,
no,
that concept of human machine teaming is so,
yeah.
so important. And, I
Mm.
love when someone said it's a great post. I'm going to forward it to my niece who's starting at a Big Four this summer. One of the things that some of you saw the study a couple weeks ago that said 40% of leaders in the Big Four would rather hire a robot than a college graduate,
Mm.
which I think is fascinating as well when we think about how this all ties to work and skills, which we're
Mm.
getting to next, right, Jess?
Yeah.
Well, I'll disappear here, but I did want to tell you that based on your last comment, Jason, I sent another story into Diginomica, and this one was on the how I'm predicting we're going to see some terrible cultural assessment scores or cultural alignment scores with companies between all the backtracking on DEI, sustainability, layoffs, and some horrible articles that I saw just this week where bosses are talking about like, hey, folks, you had your party during the pandemic with return to office and those kind of, work from home, excuse me. Now you have to return to office. And it's like, we just don't care about employees anymore. So if you really want to tee up a real incredible discussion at one of your future calls, let's talk about where the cultural assessment scores are going to go, for the next foreseeable future. Anyway,
It's a great topic. See, Jess, you shouldn't have booked us out like this. We're gonna have to start doing this more than once a week.
I know. I know. We're just gonna hang out with you guys every day and talk about what's happening out there.
Brian,
Oh,
thanks for being here.
hey, and sorry I stepped over somebody's time here, but listen,
no, it's all
it was
good.
great being on here, and thanks for noticing the article, Jess. And I'll see you guys somewhere on the road here in the very near future, I'm sure. Take
No
care.
doubt. Thank
Exactly.
you,
And say hi
Brian.
to the German Shepherd.
Yeah.
Oh, dirty paws. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, well, let's switch to our next guest, Jess. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to have Rebecca Warren on in just a minute. I want to read Nicole's question. I'm super curious how this is going to play out long term, thinking through how often those entry-level tasks are used for learning and development and then building out and then building intuition. Are we going to lose our pipeline of people who came into higher level positions? This is a very, yes. I don't know what else to say other than good question. If there's no entry level.
Good question. And Nicole, this was asked to me by all the students last night, also in Charleston.
Yeah.
What does it mean for us? Where do we do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
I love how all of these Minnesotans know Rebecca. So I also know Rebecca, but I knew her husband first. Hi, Rebecca. Way back in the day, I keep saying way back in the day, my early days in recruiting, I worked with your hubby. Say hi to Jeff.
Oh, Rebecca, you need to unmute so we can hear you. We can just see your beautiful
Yes,
glasses.
sorry. Here I am. Hello. Yes.
Welcome.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I mean, Jess, please don't take this the wrong way, and I'm just gonna slap myself, but Rebecca wins best dressed here.
I know.
Okay, so I did this on purpose because I am not from Minnesota, right? Lived in Minnesota for a long time, actually outside of Chicago is where I grew up. I live outside of Phoenix. I am visiting my mom, so I tried to wear something that would represent where I'm at. So can y'all guess where I am?
Oh,
I'm not in Hawaii.
No. Palm Springs?
I want to see. I want.
Close.
I want to see if anyone else. Someone said Florida.
I'm in Florida. Yes, well
Okay.
done. Well
Good
done.
job, Katie.
Eric says Polynesian Resort.
Well, okay, so I've been traveling all this week, so I've had different conferences that I've been speaking at in Florida, and so we had a dinner, and I was like, let me pull up my Florida casual chic meets Mrs. Roper. So I think I pulled it off. It's got a collar, but it's a caftan style, so yeah.
Mrs. Roper. Holy cow.
I need the pearls.
That is good. Yes.
I literally saw probably on Instagram or something. I saw the concept of Mrs. Roper parties,
Yes,
I want one.
I know.
Go to
Why do you
one.
think I have my dress? I just
Oh
need the
my God.
long, I just need the
Christy
long
says you
frills.
need a boa,
I need to accessorize. I agree, but I was trying to at least just, hit middle of the road.
but the
But Jess, I
glasses are
love your
cool.
hair.
I like the glasses.
Yes.
Can't miss me in a crowd. That's just
So
how I roll.
grew up outside of Chicago, lived in Minnesota. Is that where you met Jeff?
Yes.
Met-
Yes.
You had your kids here, and then you bailed. You bailed on
I
this
did.
crazy winter
Peace
stuff.
out.
He's
Can't do the winter. So in Arizona. Our
so
kids are still in Minnesota, so we come back a lot. So
yes.
but
Wow, you left them?
we did. We're just like, okay, enjoy yourself. Yeah. They're plenty old enough to take care of themselves. So
See why I love Rebecca?
Yeah,
I
but
just leave
still
the
you
children
left
in
them. Like you
Minnesota.
left
See ya.
them. I've been having a lot of internal debate about this going on, Rebecca.
What's really good about it is that I feel like we get more quality time with the kids because when we come into town, it's like, oh, mom and dad are coming, clear the schedules. And so we get all their time for a short amount, and then we back out and they get to live their lives. And we give them a place to come hang out. They can go sit by the pool or whatever when it's like 17 degrees below zero. So,
Right.
yeah.
Brian thinks that you're going to have Mrs. Roper parties at the
Oh, I
Eightfold
love it.
booth
Oh,
this fall.
Brian, I have now set up for what I'll be wearing at HR Tech. Oh,
I love it.
funny.
So, where do I start with my question? Why is everybody talking about talent intelligence? Should we start with that one, Rebecca?
Sure. So there's a lot of different definitions of what talent intelligence is, and I think that a lot of people define it in different ways. But the way that we look at it at Eightfold, and I was on a prospect meeting earlier today, and we were talking about static versus dynamic, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of what talent intelligence does, we look at it as a combination of reactive learnings, right? Debriefs and things that we've learned through things we've done, and then proactive insights. So it's kind of tying that proactive and reactive together to get a dynamic understanding of talent in the context of work. And that's a whole nother thing that we talk about. Like, what does that really mean? But when you put it in the idea of how does it help us on our day to day in the talent space, right? Across the talent life cycle, how are we thinking about what we've learned and what we need to do, what's trending, what's coming? How do we put that together and get some understanding of talent? Does that make sense?
It does. And I think the business problem we're trying to solve is that we keep saying we don't have enough. We don't have enough talent. We can't deploy them to the right work at the right time. We don't understand the skills we have in our workforce, let alone where the gaps are. So we're not agile and nimble enough to deploy talent against work in a
Right.
timely fashion. Wouldn't you say that's kind of the holy grail that we're trying to solve for with talent intelligence?
Yeah, it's the idea of who do you have in your organization who could do more than just the thing that maybe they were hired for. And we talk a lot about, hiring managers say, I need the purple squirrel, top hat, rainbow sunglasses. But do you really? Couldn't you? Because, like I always say, if you're looking for that perfect person, right, coming from TA before I came to Eightfold, you're hiring a consultant, right? If they've got 100% of what that job requires, then what is for them to, what's there for them to learn? What's there for them to share? They come in, they do their job. It's very specific and they leave. So how are we thinking about bringing in the people that have that longevity? How do we understand who's in our organization and what they not only can do, but what they might want to do, right? Like if you just looked at my background and said, you're a TA for life. I mean, I talk about my resume as a list of things I never want to do again. So, how do I get to the next thing, right? And so, coming to Eightfold,
Love that.
reinventing myself, right? I started in customer success at Eightfold. I didn't know tech. I didn't know anything about customer success, helped build out that team. And now I've moved into a marketing role in a new practice that we created about 6 months ago. So, had people not paid attention to the skills that I had, I would not be here. I would have exited, organizations much sooner because they're like, well, you're not in TA doing this thing.
So I have a question for both you and Jess. That as someone who's been building or deploying HR technology for 3+ decades now, and what I want to know is if, or what I would love your advice on, I should say, is this a new problem, or do we now have a new solution because the technology's there? I think about this a lot because I go back to my DOS and mainframe days, and I think about a lot, like, is this something we've always struggled with, and now I finally have tech, or are there other factors that are driving this outside of that now that are bringing this together at a pinnacle?
Well, I'll throw a couple of thoughts out there. This might just be the end of the thing. We might just take this right to the top of the hour, right? But one of the things that I've been doing is putting together like what are we learning from 2024 and what's happening in 2025. And I was talking with Kathy from the Josh Bersin company. We were talking about, and she just made this really quick comment, and she just said the workforce shortage. And I was like, we're not talking about the workforce shortage, but when you look at it, if you look at every single person who would be in the workforce right now and compare those to available jobs, there's more jobs than there are people, just like physically more. Now, of course, there's all different categories to put people in. But so I think we are hopefully learning that you just can't say, oh, you left, I'm going to go pluck a new person off of the TA tree, right? Like we all have learned the TA tree is not real. So I think it's something that we've always had a problem with, but I think we're getting smarter about, to what you said, Jason, we're getting smarter about what's realistic, what should we be thinking about, what can technology help us be better at, and it was talked about with Brian. How do we focus on the people, right? We went from people, we used to be called personnel, right? And then like selection, and then recruiting, and then talent acquisition, and now whatever people ops our new name is. When we think about, we went from people to automation, and now we're saying let's put the people back. I feel like we're at the spot of we need to put the people back at the center, which is what we do at Eightfold, right? That talent transformation. How do we focus on the people? Using AI to elevate people as opposed to eliminate opportunities. And so how do we redeploy, reskill, upskill, use bring the whole person to work, right? Not just what's on my resume, what I want to do, what do I care about? What if I get to a spot in my career and saying, I don't want to climb the ladder anymore, and we say, hey, the ladder is what it is, right? We're thinking about different ways to focus on people, in my opinion. Jess, what do you think?
I agree 100%. And I also I think it's always been a big problem, and it's getting bigger by the day. And this is a literal supply chain problem. We are not replacing the workforce of the world at the pace that we once were. The half-life of skills is shrinking by the day. Technology and automation are changing the nature of work and jobs and how they get done, which affects both of the previous things I just said. So the old models, the old talent models where we would, attempt to understand business needs somewhat proactively, go to the TA tree as a knee-jerk reaction, also a very expensive way to think about talent, instead of repurposing, resourcing, and
exactly
building internally. And now it's not just a buy, build, borrow conversation, it's a buy, build, borrow, bot. And so back to work design, thinking about all of the ways work can get done, forces conversations around how do you better employ and better deploy people in your workforce first. Then go to the TA tree if you must, then go to automation, of course, like then go to the other, like we just have to be more sustainable and think longer term and build more dynamic supply chains of resources, because too much is changing too fast to have this one person, one rec, reactionary sort of response.
And we can't, so Bob had put that, he talked about it exactly what we look at Eightfold is the career ladder, or a pipeline strategy, we look at it as now moving to a portfolio strategy. So not just a chessboard. It's not just moving diagonally, maybe sideways, backwards, but it's also the spots in between the spots, right? So what does it look like if I say, I'm interested in project work. I want to work for the company, but I want to work on projects. How do we move to gigs, and how do we move to flexibility and not be tied, like you said, to a spot on an org chart? We talk a lot about that. Take out the hierarchy, the boundary-less job, all the things that we're talking about. That how do I get to do the work that I'm good at? How do we look inside organizations and say, let's focus on what needs to get done, and then let's find the people with the skill sets. And when you think about in your organization, how many people have skill sets that we just don't know about, right? Jess, you think about the stuff that you do outside of work that makes you amazing inside your office doors, right? I think about the stuff that I get passionate about. What could I be doing inside the organization to help pull that together? Maybe somebody in finance is the best person to work on a cross-functional project in marketing, right? When we understand the skill sets, when we understand what people want to do and allow them to really bring themselves to work, it also changes the conversation with managers, and it takes it out of a twice you were talking earlier about like performance reviews, right? Like, or setting up your goals. It turns it into a proactive conversation about what's right for the organization, not just from the hiring manager perspective, but also from the employee. And employees then stop being scared to have conversations with their managers, because it's not about talent hoarding. It's not about a place on an org chart. It's about the conversation of what's going to be best for all involved from the lens of people.
Yeah.
I need to breathe. Sorry. I could just keep going, but I'm going to breathe.
I
No,
love
no,
Paul's-
it's really, oh, sorry, Jess, go ahead.
No, I mean, Paul's comment is important too. Line managers, people managers, like the people who are managing those resources, these resources we keep talking about, they're not all that well enabled to do these things, to redeploy people, to career manage and career develop people. There's brass tacks involved. We can
Yep.
talk theoretically about this all day long, but it has to come down to brass tacks. You have to tear down rigid job structures and career frameworks, and you have to create actual paths, new pathways for this mobility and redeployment to happen. And you have to make it a cultural thing. You have to let people manage that way.
And not even yes, and not just about ripping down walls, but it's about tying it to what the organization is trying to do, right? We spend a lot of time hiring people doing the work. Like, nobody wants to come to work to suck. Like, well, most people don't, right? Like, we want to come and succeed and do things that we feel are adding to the overall organization. But if we don't know what the organization is trying to do, how in the world are we going to be able to perform against that objective? So one of the things thinking about, like, how do we understand that business priority? So when you make a hire, you understand that business objective that the CEO is driving towards, right? If you could tie every single hire to a business objective, what would that do to the work that gets done, to the way that you value your job, and to your understanding of the corporation overall? So it's breaking down the cultural piece, it's putting in those pathways, but it's also saying, small steps, big vision, but it's how do you connect to the overall strategy of the organization, making that critical in order for every hire. It's not just about what the hiring manager wants, but it's about what's going to drive the business overall, and
Yeah.
moving from order takers to strategic growth, revenue focused folks.
So Rebecca, I'd love to hear what you're finding with your customers. Because this problem's getting bigger. It's getting more, when I say bigger, it's getting more complex. So it's just more sides of the Rubik's Cube. I mean, some of you guys saw, like, the quit rate was the lowest it's been since COVID. That report that just came out from Indeed yesterday. So people aren't quitting. We aren't reskilling, which is a huge problem right there. Then we don't know the skills people do have. And we've got this thing we talked about earlier where we're not bringing new people into the company anymore because they're not ready. So I think this is much more complex than it was 3 years ago. And I'm curious as to, with technology like Eightfold, where you see people starting. I mean, Paul just said, how do we make the case? It seems most companies get nowhere near this conversation. And
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your response to that.
So we were actually just talking about that this morning on a different meeting, but talking about when we think about where to start, it feels daunting. It's overwhelming, right? We're talking about skills, taxonomies and ontologies and frameworks and, you know, all of the things that feel overwhelming. And a lot of people like have gone and worked with a third party to create a competency framework. You know, when I worked at General Mills in TA, I loved the competency framework. I'm like, I understand this, and I at least understand culture and behavior and how to tie things together. And I took those competencies and wrote them into our interview guide, so at least we were consistent in what we were trying to look for. But when we take that that step further of saying, first of all, one of the easiest ways to do this, and we talk about this with our customers and also with prospects, one of the easiest ways that we do that, and Rebecca, yes, skills should be the foundation of competency frameworks. When you look at competencies, that's that culture and behavior, and then the skills get tied to those competencies. So a lot of folks are like, we got to throw out our competency model. We're like, no, it works together. Put those skills together. But we were talking about earlier this morning is you could identify. So for instance, you could identify one company did this, said, we want to know where this skill is in our entire organization, right? So you could say, here's 100 skills, and you can use them as power skills, or you can use them as tech skills, or you know, however you want to define them. But here's the 100 skills that are going to drive our company forward. Let's figure out, first of all, where they are in the organization, and then let's start plugging away at that. For instance, like thinking, we don't really think about this very often, but AI as a skill, right? Not just as a concept. If we think about AI as a skill, there are people in every single organization that have a connection to AI. So if you just start looking at where is this skill in our organization? How are we going to use it? How are we going to pay attention to it? If you plug a particular list in and start tracking where those skills are. Or if you say, we're going to start with a department, and this department is looking for XYZ, maybe it's one of your departments that's really looking to move the business forward. And you say, hey, we're going to identify the skills in this department, and we're going to spend time understanding, what does someone think their proficiency is? What does the hiring manager think the proficiency is? How are we going to tie those skills to a job description or to a role, not a job description, but how do we take the job description and those skills and tie it to a role so we understand what that looks like? Set the benchmark, and then start there, right? It can't always be boiling the ocean, which, you know, trying to do everything. Try to do one piece at a time and identify those skills and then build it out. And so that's where we find a lot of our customers do that small bites, big vision, right? You eat the elephant one bite at a time. So how do you start small and then just continue the journey?
And I always remind people when if you're doing skills work, you're doing transformation work. And transformation, it includes tech. It's not about putting a tech solution in place. It's about painting a clear picture of the vision you're trying to achieve so that people know what those cultural changes and new behaviors look like. So if you're going to reward people, if you want people to attain new skills, because that's the culture you're trying to create. You're identifying and closing skill gaps. You understand where you're short on necessary skills for the business. You create those strategies. Then you have to create a culture that supports that. Reward people for attaining new skills. Make it matter in terms of how you evaluate their performance and suggest them for promotion or create mobility pathways so they can go leverage those new skills or mentor to help them. Like, there's other stuff that needs to happen that's probably more of a cultural shift. This is the way we're going to act and behave. This is what we're going to reward and incent so that everybody can get on board. You can't just say, well, we're using Eightfold now, so we're skills powered. Where we have all this talent intelligence, but nobody knows how to act differently.
Yes.
Eightfold is a solution. There are lots of solutions put the tablecloth on. But you've got to do some other things too. And I know you work with clients on getting to impact and value. Is that kind of the rub that you're seeing as well?
Well, yeah, and that's the whole reason that the department that I'm in exists. We are
Yeah,
called talent-centered transformation
right.
because it's not shifting, it's pivoting. It's not making an incremental difference in driving a faster car, right? It's looking at transforming how you think, how you look at things, turning things upside down, and looking at it from, again, from the lens of people in the context of work. We think about trying to fill holes on an org chart. And, we did that. We created org charts because we physically had to know where people were when they started moving in office buildings. But what if we just did away with the idea of filling a hole on an org chart and looking at the bigger picture of what are we trying to achieve, right? If we drive from outcomes on down as opposed to tasks on up, we have a
Mhm.
whole different way of tying things together. And there's so many pieces I'm missing. I have notes and pages and thoughts, and we
I
have
know.
no
Oh,
time. So, but I think you're exactly right, Jess. You can't just get incrementally better. You have to shift. And just because you implement a solution doesn't mean you are now skills powered, right? If you
yeah.
implement AI, but you don't change the way people think and folks don't use the platform and they're not spending time putting the human in the loop after they get this, spit out, you're nowhere further along.
Yeah. Michelle, I feel like you asked a money question.
I need to look at all the comments. I've just
I
lost track of
know
them.
it's hard to keep track of. Jason and I are used to the ticker tape. You have to make it part of your job. It literally has to be part of your job to learn. Like if
Mhm.
Jason hasn't made it part of my job to teach myself about AI, I should be fired. Like it has to be
Yep.
your job to improve yourself, to upskill yourself. You have to make them aware of like these are the things that are important for us as a business. This is the job that I need you to do and the skills that I need you to have to be effective. And you have to create the time, space, culture, performance culture for me to get that for myself. People
Yep.
shouldn't be doing. That's why the hourly workforce, the frontline workforce, comes in the lowest on our survey stuff around learning and career development and stuff because they don't feel a sense of permission to do it the clock and they don't have the same access to tools and systems to do it. You've got
Yep.
to connect these dots. If you want to create a culture of learning and upskilling and reskilling, make it part of the job.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle, Rebecca, Christy, I like literally just earlier today, I was working on target hours for my team for 2025. And as I was doing it, I had to actually intentionally create hours for learning.
Mhm.
And if you don't do that,
I-
the
you
term
poof.
relevance is what
Yeah.
starts to smack you in the face. And you're all of a sudden gonna find that you're irrelevant, your team's irrelevant, and therefore you as a leader are irrelevant. So,
Yep.
I
Put it on
mean,
your calendar. Make the
that
time.
education has to, I mean, that time, and it's not to just work on these weird Google 10% projects. It has to be focused on relearning, re-education, and unlearning the past.
Yep. And then shifting to that becoming part of the narrative. And that's
Yep.
when those
Yeah.
conversations become so much less scary because it's all about learning and growing. And now you've developed a learning culture. I think it's coming up in the chat. Easier said than done. I mean, there's a
Right.
lot of things that we could talk about to
We
start
talk
with.
big on this show.
Yeah, we have the umbrella. There's lots of ways to do that. So I know it sounds overwhelming, but a lot of times it's just breaking down to how could I change 5 minutes a day? What could I do differently 15 minutes? It's at my commute. Is it, after I'm done with work, can I take a walk and listen to a podcast or set time during your lunch to read? I mean, I think if we start building that into, and there's organizations who are really successful, right? Those are the ones
Yeah.
that are leading as opposed to lagging, is they have created that learning culture.
Yeah. Ah, so
Rebecca,
good.
thanks for being here. A lot of people are leaving. They're all saying
We have a lot
someone
of
wants you to come
fans.
Don't
speak at the,
leave.
they
Come
want you to come
back.
back to Minneapolis. Steve, it depends on what the weather's like. Is that's what we've learned
Yeah.
That's
based on
exactly right. Or what the
ba-
children are doing.
yes, exactly, exactly.
Well,
So
thanks for the
thank you so
time,
much for
all.
being here,
For
Rebecca.
sure. For sure.
Steve Lewis was nice enough to show up just to see you, he said.
Woohoo, Steve.
Yes.
All the Steves.
Yes, all the you have a big Steve fan
All the
club, I've
Steves, the
learned.
Pauls. Yes,
Yes,
awesome.
exactly.
Oh, thanks all. Appreciate the
Oh,
chat.
thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great weekend. Say goodbye to January. It's gone, and we'll see you next month.